today at Front Porch Ideas and More. Today we're going to replace a porch column that's all rotted out, needs to be replaced. It's going to be too difficult to fix it, so it's just going to be easier to go ahead and replace it. So all we did was we took off the railing. I cut that off. I'll show you on the site, but I just cut through that with the Sawzall and the metal blade to get rid of the nails. We moved that out of the way. I've got a 4x4 on a jack, and what we're going to do is we're going to lift this porch ceiling just a little bit in order to get this loose. And once it's loose, we can take it out, and then we can put the other one in, lower it back down, we'll be good to go. So stay with us and we'll show you how it's done. Before we get started actually replacing the porch column, there's a couple things you need to know before you decide whether you want to attempt this or not. A few of the basic things is your columns have to be able to carry the load of your porch roof. So make sure that when you purchase your columns that it specifies on them how much weight they can handle. Make sure that that corresponds to how much weight your roof. If you're not sure, you need to contact a local contractor or an architect, and they'll be able to tell you what you need to know. The next thing is you have to have the right column. Not all porch columns are supporting columns, especially when you do using vinyl. So some vinyl porch columns are structural and some are not. So you need to make sure that if you're using those, that you select the right ones. For our specific porch, we have non-structural vinyl columns. So if you're doing that, or if you're using wood columns, you just have to make sure that they're meant to be able to support your load. And the third thing is, if you're using wooden columns, no matter the design, if they're hollow, then you need to make sure that you ventilate them properly. And you can go to our website and on our page, and you'll see we have a thing on there that tells you what you need to know based on how many square inches you have a column, how large of ventilation you need to do.
If you don't do that, the moisture and water inside that wooden column will make it rot from the inside out. So you'll have the same problem all over again. So it needs to be ventilated properly.
Okay, before we begin, we just want to say that this is a project that's replacing a rotting wooden porch column. So no matter the type of porch column you have, whether it's vinyl, wrought iron, etc., the process is basically the same, with the exception of possibly repairing or removing stone or concrete columns. That's a different ballgame. But after watching this video and viewing the information on our site, you should get a pretty good idea as to whether this is a project you can do yourself. So let's start with step number one. The first thing you want to do is detach the balustrade, if you have one. So if you don't have one, you can just hang on for a second and we'll get on to step two. But step one would be to detach the balustrade, which is your railing. So you want to take your Sawzall, a reciprocating saw or a hacksaw, and cut through the screws or nails that are holding the balustrade to the porch column that you're going to replace. Now, as a tip, you might want to have a couple blocks of wood around so that you can put it underneath the balustrade, especially if it's attached to another column beside it, so that you can support it so you don't damage it. You want to take care not to damage or twist the balustrades, so that makes it easier to put them right back on after you replace the porch column. So the second step then, once you detach the balustrade, is prepare the new porch column. So what you want to do is you want to measure the distance top of the column, the existing wooden column, to the porch floor, so you know how tall yours has to be. And you're going to use that to cut the new porch column. Now, be careful before you cut, because you want to mimic the design of the two porch columns. Now, if they're just standard square, no detailing on them or anything, then you're all right. But if they happen to be a turned column, then you want to make sure usually the top portion is a little bit smaller than the bottom portion, so that you want to make sure that all of those are in sync with your other porch columns. So just be careful when you're cutting that you're making sure that they match the other porch columns. So in our case, we measured that, and you may have to cut both ends in order to match that design, by the way. So in our case, we'd allow for both a bottom column plate and a wood plate. So this is going to sit on a wooden plate and a metal plate that sits on the floor. So you have to allow for that. If you're using those, then you have to take that into consideration for your measurements. So, and now is also the time to make sure your porch column is ventilated properly. You come to our site, we have a link that shows you what you need to do to be able to ventilate your wooden porch columns. We drilled holes in the top and bottom of this porch column to make sure that it was going to be ventilated, and did some other things. And we have more information on that on the site. So once you have that and you have your porch column cut to length, a new one, then the next step is to raise the roof, so of your porch roof. So you want to measure the distance between the floor and the top of your jack, depending on how high your jack is. And that's be your jack in its lowered position. So then add an extra inch for clearance purposes. Now take that measurement and subtract it from the column height you did in step 1. That way you'll know that this is the measurement you're going to use to cut your 4x4. That should give you enough clearance to put the 4x4 in your jack, slip it under the beam, and then be able to raise it without too much effort at all. So, and then the next thing you want to do is make sure that you remove any screws or nails that be securing your old porch column to either the roof or the beam, or to the floor, to the roof beam or to the floor. So make sure that your porch column isn't nailed in or screwed into anything. So you want to position the jack with the 4x4 next to the column that you're going to remove, and slowly raise it until the column is free from the roof. Now you're going to probably hear a little bit of cracking sound. Now do this very slowly. You don't need to move it very much, because all you need is just a little bit of clearance to be able to move that old column out of the way. And once it's free, then just slide that column out from underneath the roof. So now you just reverse the process. If you have trim pieces, you want to make sure that you add those trim pieces to the top and bottom of the new column before you slide it back into position. You also want to attach a bottom plate if you're going to do so at this point in time. So slide the new column into place and use the level to ensure it's straight. Make sure it's aligned properly with all the other columns on your porch. And once it's all aligned and straight and everything, then you can slowly lower the jack down so the roof beam sits back up on top of that column, and then you can secure your column with screws or nails to the beam. Now the next step is just reattach the balustrade, and you can use a level to help you assist you do that. Make sure it's level, put it back into position. You may have to move the column slightly in order to make it fit. Just make sure everything's still level, and you're good to go. And after that, then you go ahead and paint and stain your new porch column, and basically that's what's involved in replacing a porch column. So it's not very difficult to do. You must be careful, because there are a lot of weight resting on your posts, so you have to be extra careful and be confident in the tools you're using. So if you have any questions or hesitancy about this, and you don't feel like you have the skills to do this, then we highly recommend you consult with a reputable contractor who'd be glad to do the job for you and do it quickly and do it right. Hope this is informative for you, and you can check out our site for more information. It's Dave from Porch Ideas and more.